What is Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson's upside in fantasy football this year? We're talking about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is former NFL scout Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, we had a good conversation yesterday about the running back position. Lots of Jonathan Taylor talk. We're moving over to the wide receiver position today. We started with the losers, the kind of some negative thoughts yesterday. Let's start off on the right foot today. And I think the right foot is Garrett Wilson, the Jets' second-year receiver. Of course, the reigning offensive rookie of the year in the NFL. And, Matt, I'm sure you saw the Aaron Rodgers debut in week 3 of the preseason. Looked so sharp, and Garrett Wilson looked just as good. He caught that first touchdown from Rodgers in a Jets uniform. You look at the Jets depth chart, and they've certainly they've had a rough time. I mean, we get the Corey Davis surprise retirement. Alan Lazard is banged up. Mecole Hardman also dealing with a minor injury. There's talk that my guy Randall Cobb may see a significant role for the Jets early. And as much as I love him as a player, that's not good news. If Randall Cobb's one of your main guys in 2023. So, I mean, Garrett Wilson he's going to see all the targets he can handle this season, especially early in the season, while some of his teammates are dealing with some minor injuries. How high can Garrett Wilson climb in the dynasty rankings, Matt? He's already wide receiver 5. A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb just ahead of him.
I think maybe pass those two.
I was going to say, yeah, maybe we should lock this guy in as the wide receiver 3 right now.
Yeah, A.J. Brown's really impressive, but I don't think that's far-fetched. I know we'll probably bring up Amon-Ra St. Brown at some point during the show because I think he's a winner as well.
Yep.
But I have a tiny, tiny reservation with the two of them. And here's my logic is it's not easy being Cooper Kupp when you're like the only show in town on an offense and the whole planet knows that you're the wide receiver, the pass catcher one by a mile. You know, like, of course, everyone's going to game plan around Wilson, St. Brown, Kupp, etc. I think both are up for it, but it's not gonna be easy for them. I mean, the targets are coming, and Rodgers will make it all happen. I have no doubts about that. And the Lions scheme things up really well too. But it's nice to have a little bit of help.
I think that's a fair concern with Garrett Wilson. I don't think I don't have that worry with St. Brown. We've already seen him do it. He was the centerpiece of that offense. Really as a rookie late in his rookie year, and then all of last season, he's already, to me, proven that that he can be that Cooper Kupp light. So I'm not worried with St. Brown at all. I get the worry with Garrett Wilson a little bit. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out, I guess. But the upside is huge. I mean, if you've got Garrett Wilson on your team, and somebody offers you A.J. Brown just 1 for 1, I'm rejecting.
Guys, it's a total coin flip for me, but I think I'd prefer Wilson, who's slightly younger. I guess that's the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and the same. I would say the same about C.D. Lamb as well. Garrett Wilson just turned 23 years old. So DLF ADP says he's the wide receiver 5. I think he's more like the wide receiver 3 right now. Matt, who did you have as a dynasty winner from the wide receiver position?
I picked two guys. I picked
All right.
Dotson with Washington.
Okay.
For a couple reasons. I know I'm getting way ahead of things, but I think Howell looked capable in the preseason. I mean, I think that's a fine word. He's capable. He's not a disaster. But more so, it's not even the McLaurin injury, which certainly factors into my decision here. But the way Dotson is running routes, the way he looks, how sharp he is, how he finished last year, I think his stock is still too low. And my other one is Marvin Mims, just because of opportunity. I'm sure we'll talk Judy. This was Sean Payton's first draft choice as czar of the Broncos. I think he's going to get every opportunity to succeed.
Let's start with Dotson. Dotson is the wide receiver 32 in our ADP. Some players directly ahead of him: Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper, Treylon Burks, Quentin Johnston, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore. I think
first 4 or 5, I definitely want Dotson more.
I was going to say, I definitely think there's room for Dotson to move up the list there. I mean, you look at a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who, I'm sure we're going to be talking about him very soon. He's the wide receiver 24. Jordan Addison, who I like a lot. He's a top 20 wide receiver already.
Oh, I like Dotson better than him.
Yeah, there's some wiggle room to get Dotson up this list. Terry McLaurin, by the way, is the wide receiver 22. McLaurin about to turn 28 years old. Jahan Dotson just 23 years old. Again, if I've got Jahan Dotson on my team and you offer me Terry McLaurin, I'm hitting that reject button pretty quickly. So that's that kind of tells you maybe where Jahan Dotson really should be valued. Marvin Mims, I'm with you. The opportunity. I mean, we saw the unfortunate injury to Tim Patrick. He's done for the year. The issue that KJ Hamler is dealing with. He's off the roster officially right now. And then Jerry Jeudy dealing with this injury. You have to look at Marvin Mims as a winner, especially if you're not a believer in Cortland Sutton. I think Sutton is probably the wide receiver 1 or the top target by default right now, but I would still rather have Mims than Sutton.
Agree with everything you said. I don't even have much to add to it. I'm not a big Sutton believer. I don't think he's a very twitchy guy or separator, where Mims certainly is.
Some other winners. Let's talk about a couple of these guys. We already mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tank Dell is really an interesting guy. A lot of doubts about him. I think, he could end up being a real player for the Houston Texans. And he goes from a player that we weren't sure would even make that roster, a player that we were due to his size, unsure would even really see the field. And you still got to be careful making too many assumptions based on what we see in the preseason, but certainly looked like he could be a key part of that Texans offense. The other guys that I had here on my list, Matt, were the two Steelers, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, both of them winners. This Pittsburgh Steelers offense, we were exchanging some text about it the other night as Kenny Pickett was just threading the needle. I mean, the Pickens catch, especially down around the 10-yard line, was a beauty. And this looks like a completely different team all of a sudden. What's happened in Pittsburgh?
Well, the quarterback has certainly progressed and is more comfortable. There's no question about that. The scheme, they were the youngest offense in the league last year. I think people need to remember that. I mean, and everyone took a year step forward, and then you throw in like a Siamalu at guard as a solid player. But I think Matt Canada has actually done a really good job of attacking more of the field, the making Kenny comfortable, throwing in the middle of the field, using more motion, using more players. And I keep moving Pickens up and up. And Deontay he was already very underrated because he didn't catch any touchdowns last year.
Yeah, both of those guys have fallen quite a ways in ADP over the past few months, and we're starting to see both of them climb. Deontay Johnson is the wide receiver 33 currently. He's actually right behind Jahan Dotson that we mentioned earlier. George Pickens, the wide receiver 37. I mean, that sounds really low. I look at some of these names around them, Christian Kirk and Keenan Allen, Hollywood Brown. It's what we always say on here. The wide receiver position is just so deep.
It is.
You
I like it better than those three names, though.
Yeah, I definitely think that both of those guys could be moved up quite a ways as they're battling either older players with some questions about injury or their team status. So yeah, they could be bumped up at least a handful of spots there. Matt, we do have we got some losers to talk about, players that have lost dynasty value this preseason. We'll get that started next.
Guys, these days, every new potential hire I bet it feels like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. So you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. I mean, LinkedIn Jobs finds the right people for your team faster and for free. And it's very, very easy to post a free job on LinkedIn. I wish I had a tool like this when I was in the scouting world or even in the media world. And, there's simple tools like screening questions, make it really easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So here's what I need you to do. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster, easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, all one word, all caps, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
Talking wide receiver winners and losers from the NFL preseason. Matt, who's your wide receiver loser? A player you expect to lose value, who has lost value. You're just not so sure at this point.
I'm going with Kadarius Toney.
Oh yeah,
and for one simple reason: reliability. I mean, this guy's been the least reliable receiver, despite his immense talent, since he's entered the league, and Giants gave up on him quickly. I understand there's immense upside here, and if you can get the ball in his hands and all that stuff, I just don't trust him at all.
No, I don't either. I'm not sure that the Chiefs trust him. I mean, even late in the season after they made that trade and they were making the playoff run, even when he was seemingly healthy, he was playing 10, 12 snaps a game, getting one or two targets. And granted, he made plays with the limited work that he got. That's what has us intrigued as dynasty managers. But if they were not looking at him as a full-time receiver, then what are they doing now when he's essentially missed the entire preseason with this injury? Does sound like there's a chance he could still play in week one, but you're right. I mean, if you never know when this guy's going to go out of the lineup, off the field, it doesn't feel great to put him in your fantasy lineup.
Exactly. I just don't trust him. I want someone else to deal with that headache. He just seems like a career-long headache.
Kadarius Toney is the wide receiver 51 in our latest ADP, and I look at some of the names below him, including rookies like Jonathan Mingo, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims, and Jaden Reed. I want all four of those rookies over the headache that is Kadarius Toney.
Well said. Yep.
I went with a player that we've already mentioned, Jerry Jeudy here. Some really odd reporting here surrounding the Jerry Jeudy injury. We heard about it when he suffered that hamstring injury. I believe that was just last week in practice, had to be carted off, immediately grabbed for the leg. And there were quickly reports that this could be a serious hamstring injury that could cost him up to 6 weeks of game time. And then we got some more encouraging reports. Maybe he wouldn't even miss week one and things, speculation like that. Ultimately, as the news came down yesterday and teams were making their roster moves, Jerry Jeudy was not placed on the short-term IR. I believe that would have cost him the first 4 games, if I have that correct.
Yes, that is.
He was not placed on that short-term IR, giving some hope that he would be ready, if not by week 1, sometime in that first month of the season. But then I also heard this comment from Adam Schefter on his own podcast. Our buddies Evan Silva and Adam Levitan were on that show doing a fantasy football preview with Schefter, and Adam Schefter essentially said that he had heard Jeudy could be out as much as 6 weeks.
Wow.
As much as the first 6 weeks of the season. So suddenly there's this confusion on Jerry Jeudy's actual status. And while we still don't know, what we do know is that's one of those nagging injuries that you try to come back from, you re-injure it or you aggravate it, and you're back out of the lineup for another 2 or 3 weeks, especially if you try to come back too early. I'm worried about Jerry Jeudy this season, Matt.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. And I can't mention Matt Harmon enough whenever we talk wide receivers. And one of the other reasons I picked Kadarius Toney, to paraphrase Matt's thoughts on him, is Toney just kind of runs around and does whatever he wants and doesn't really run real routes. And his thoughts on Jeudy are also more negative than positive. I mean, I think Matt's exact words, give or take, are there's this conception that Judy's a superb route runner, and Matt doesn't agree with that at all. And I see exactly what he's saying, that he's not a real crisp guy. So I didn't love either to begin with.
Yeah, just seems like it's always something with Jerry Jeudy. I mentioned his ADP earlier. It's wide receiver 24. I certainly think that will be falling. I think that was too high to begin with, honestly. We talked about Jahan Dotson and maybe the Steelers wide receivers, several other names below him. He could fall out potentially out of the top 30 wide receivers when we do that next round of ADP here coming up. Matt, we got a few more players to talk about, wide receivers that could be losing some dynasty value in the coming days and weeks. We'll do that next. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Everydayers, check out tomorrow's show. Kate and Marcus will be back. They'll be talking about the tight end winners and losers from the preseason. So listen in for that conversation. All right, Matt, we talked about Kadarius Toney and Jerry Jeudy, a couple wide receivers who have been dealing with injuries and as a result have lost some dynasty value. They're not the only ones. Terry McLaurin, you highlighted Jahan Dotson as one of your winners. McLaurin, of course, dealing with a toe injury. Doesn't seem to be as serious as Judy's or some other players' injuries, and still a chance he'll be back by week 1, but just I would say the uncertainty of his status, along with the emergence of Jahan Dotson, starting to push Terry McLaurin down the board a little bit. I know you love the player. What are you thinking about McLaurin right now?
I just know toes linger, and it's a terrible injury for a wide receiver. So, that's not great.
The other injury that we saw in the preseason was the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba. Of the players we've talked about, this could actually end up being the most serious or significant. He did require surgery on that broken bone in his wrist, and talk that he could miss the first 5 or 6 weeks as well. I believe Seattle has a week 5 bye, so maybe we see JSN in week 6. Just kind of a bummer of a situation. This is not one we're worried about long-term by any means. At least I'm not. JSN, a player that I drafted even this week in a late rookie draft. That injury pushed him down to the sixth pick in the rookie draft I was in, and that's in a single quarterback league. Wow. So we're starting. We're starting to see his value impacted at least slightly because of that injury.
But it's really from a redraft perspective, not dynasty. Right. And I think we talked about this last week, that I wasn't going to start him in week 1 for redraft anyway.
Yeah, JSN. Yeah, I totally agree. JSN, wide receiver 17 in our ADP. He's still a player I look at as likely to be a wide receiver 1, meaning a top 12 wide receiver this time next year. I think that's a very reasonable path for him. Devontae Adams, his teammate DK Metcalf, a couple of the guys directly above him, kind of in his way of that wide receiver 1 status. Did you have any other players, Matt, on your loser category?
Should we talk Ravens or Cardinals?
I mean, both are pretty rough.
Bateman and Beckham, I'd like to have seen a little bit at least. And the Cardinals are going to start Josh Dobbs, I think.
Yeah. The Cardinals situation is a weird one. It doesn't make me feel good about Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, really anybody on that roster, honestly. They cut Colt McCoy. They make the trade, the late trade for Josh Dobbs. They're ready seemingly to roll him out. They also have the rookie Clayton Tune. I'm sure we'll see him at some point this season, but it sounds like it's going to be Josh Dobbs, and I guess that's better than Colt McCoy. Probably not much, but yeah, it's tough to feel great about your Cardinals wide receivers. And I'm with you on Rashad Bateman as well. That one's been a frustrating situation. Just another player who can't stay on the field.
Right. And I wish we'd seen Odell a little bit too. Like Zay Flowers came in, looked great, but I'm not worried about Lamar, but we didn't see him either, so I would have liked to had a little firmer grasp of the passing game, I guess, in Baltimore.
Yeah, there's been a lot of excitement with the new offensive coordinator there, Todd Monken, coming in, formerly of Georgia, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when they were playing some exciting offensive football. But you're right. We think we like it. We think Todd Monken in this offense, or as the leader of this offense. But yeah, we've seen so little in the preseason that it's another one of those unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm. It wouldn't blow me away if there's a little bit of growing pains. I mean, that's a drastically different offense. It might just take a little bit.
That's probably all good news for a guy like Mark Andrews, right? Andrews is still going to just tear it up to start the season, especially. Last player on my list was Treylon Burks, another guy that suffered an injury. We talked about him as well. Obviously, the Titans make the move earlier in the offseason to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, so that kind of pushes Burks down a peg as well. He's a player who's been losing value. I think we talked about him last week or the week before. I've still got some questions about him, but as his value dips, I would be trying to acquire him and take advantage of that dip.
Good call. I'm really out on DeAndre Hopkins. So if this is a buying opportunity for Burks, I'm in. Yeah.
Makes sense. Those are the wide receiver winners and losers from the preseason, and that is going to do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.